And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It's Tuesday, October 29th. I am Josh Engleman, and I'm here to break down everything for today's four-game NBA slate, locking at 7:30 tonight. So keep that in mind. Coming off of last night's really big slate. Hope you had Paolo Banchero, folks, because that man had a hell of a first half in like a really ridiculous way. Just went next level bonkers. Rest of the slate was meh. Ended up playing like the large majority of all things Atlanta. Didn't go well. Had a lot of Jokic, which was good. I also had a lot of Wemby, which was less good. 20 boards was pretty awesome, but just 14 points. 4 stocks is like the average performance. I don't know. It was a day. It was a day. Memphis got yucky with Morant out. Shout out to anybody that picked up a dub, though. That's for sure. What would it take for the NBA to have injury reporting 90 minutes before tip? All these gambling sponsors, and it gets worse every year with news. Did I miss something for yesterday? What did I miss? Travis, what's good? And everybody that's here, good morning. We got a lot of time today. 4 games to break down. We should be able to zip through it and build a couple lineups at the end. Jake, I needed Sohan to make a 3, so I was cheering for Sohan, I guess. Yeah, I missed the old process, but I don't mind not being live at 6:30. That's a little too early for me. Yeah, I had 1 share of Paolo Banchero, so I stopped checking every single thing that I had at like 7:45 or something. It was awful. It was awful. Oh, Nafal, I was just curious if I missed some news that like was underreported. I thought yesterday was a pretty easy day, all things considered. Oh, well, I say we dive in. What do you guys say? Lots to talk about. Lots of back-to-backs, too, so we're flying a little blind here. First game up. It's going to be the Denver Nuggets, 5.5-point favorites in Brooklyn. 217.5 total. Now, as I'm looking at Denver, the clear best play for me is Jokic. Now, we got to remember, ownership is going to be a little juiced for sure. 4-game slate, numbers are going to be a little higher. We're at about 25% ownership for Jokic across both sites. We're at 30 for Murray on DK, 40 on FanDuel. Interesting. 10 to 20 on MPJ, 10 to 15 on Aaron Gordon, 10% for Christian Brown on FanDuel, 30 for Christian Brown on DraftKings because he's 4,400. So on DK, Christian Brown is the best Denver option. On FanDuel, it's Jokic. Overall, it's Jokic. And he looks great. I mean, he should nuke Brooklyn. They have nothing that they can send at him. Like, not that Nick Claxton isn't good, but it's not like Nick Claxton's going to play 35 minutes and match Jokic. And after that, it's Noah Clowney and a bunch of other idiots. So I feel like Jokic takes yesterday's performance. What do you have, 40 and 10 or something? Yeah, 40 and 10. I think he takes that 40 and 10 game and runs it right back here today. Yeah, obviously, OT yesterday for Jokic, played 44 minutes. Sorry, that whistle was probably really bad in the mic. My bad. Either way, I want Jokic. Paying up for him does not seem to be all that problematic. I mean, he pairs very well with Christian Brown on DraftKings if you need to save some salary. The Murray, Porter, Gordon trio is a little interesting because I think Aaron Gordon is pretty significantly under-owned. And I think that Jamal Murray is at least a little bit over-owned. So they all look pretty similar to me. I do actually think that MPJ is the best option of the three of them, just because he has the MPE on both sites. Murray has it on DraftKings, but not on FanDuel. Aaron Gordon doesn't have it at all. So the flexibility for Porter is really helpful. But I like Aaron Gordon a lot on DraftKings, sub 10%. I think that's just, one, I expect him to do pretty well on the boards. And two, I just think that he's a little under-owned for what we're getting out of this slate. Now, for the rest of Denver, it's pretty much impossible to get to anything else of value. Highest owned guy otherwise is Westbrook at like 2.5%. So it's really just, for Denver at least, starting five or bust, the way that I'm seeing it right now. And that's going to be Jokic and Christian Brown on DK. And it's going to be Jokic and, honestly, like, MPJ pay up to Pete Contrarian. I had him 20% optimal. He's 10% owned. Denver's fascinating on this back-to-back. So they're going from Toronto to Brooklyn. Not exactly major travel, so that's not too bad. I just want to unload on this starting five. Porter rotation is ugly. Bringing in Julian early. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and disagree. The Michael Porter Jr. rotation, at least based on yesterday, is amazing. He's got the best rotation on the team. Well, that's not even remotely close to the spot you need to see it. All right, I can stretch that out. So let's go like this. Perfect. That's popcorn machine for yesterday. I mean, he played 34 minutes. I want Michael Porter Jr. to be the one guy that plays with the bench unit. This is a perfect rotation for Michael Porter Jr. If you can get Michael Porter Jr. playing with Strother, Westbrook, Watson, and Saric, Michael Porter Jr. is going to get more shots than he is when he plays with the starters. So if they continue to stagger MPJ with the second unit, and I expect them to do that because of Westbrook. If you're going to be playing Westbrook on the second unit, then the guys that you need with Westbrook are shooters. And the best shooter on this team by far is Michael Porter Jr. So I love Michael Porter Jr. playing the staggered rotation. That is perfect. Perfect. It's a good rotation. So I just want to point that out. As we look at the Brooklyn side, God, this sucks. Really not fun to talk about Brooklyn today. For one major, well, not even one major reason, but one reason for sure for Brooklyn is the fact that Ben Simmons is out for today. Still no Bojan Bogdanovic, no Day'Ron Sharpe, no Trendon Watford. They're missing three guys that guard bigs. So creates an interesting dynamic for Brooklyn. Probably not the best day to not have guys to guard bigs when you face Jokic. We have 35% ownership coming to Dennis Schroeder across both sites, and around 30 for Cam Johnson on both sites. 10 for Cam Thomas, around 10 for Dorian Finney-Smith, and around 10 for Nick Claxton on FanDuel. So let's start on the Brooklyn side with the things that are unavoidable. That's going to be Dennis Schroeder on DK and FanDuel and Cam Johnson. That ownership, completely correct. I had Schroeder 27% optimal on DK, 25 on FanDuel. I had Cam Johnson just shy of 20% on both sites. You just have to get to those guys. They're playing north of 30 minutes. They're some of the only functional NBA players that exist for Brooklyn. It's not all that appealing. But those guys are real. The guy that I expect everybody to want to talk about is Cam Thomas. 9% owned on DraftKings at 7,700. 8% owned on FanDuel at 8K. I hope I get to him. Like, I want to be very clear. I hate Cam Thomas. I do not think he's a good basketball player. He's like the fakest basketball player that exists. But I think he's under-owned today. Like, this is a 4-game slate. There's no Steph Curry. So, like, we're removing one guy, like, sort of like similar to Cam Thomas that's just not going to be there. I think he's under-owned. I really do. I don't like it, but I think he looks like a really good GPP play if he's 10% or less. But you are live to have a really ugly experience. Yeah, Deuce Track, couldn't disagree more. Couldn't disagree more. I'll tell you what, though, if you want someone to take a shot, Cam Thomas is on the short list of people that should do that. But in terms of doing anything good, I will pass. I will pass. But I like him in GPPs. Dorian Finney-Smith is perfect filler. Nick Claxton's scary just because we've been seeing notes about them like stretching him out a little bit more and getting more minutes. I went to 26. It doesn't result in me getting like a ton of him, but if he's playing 26 minutes, he doesn't look bad. After that, value-wise, I don't think you really want to go to, like, I think Jalen Wilson is interesting today as value. His minutes have been weird. He played like 35 on opening night and limited minutes in the next 2 games, but no Ben Simmons means we need to spread 24 minutes out across all of these dudes, and I don't think they're going to be just grabbing new people. So I like the idea of going to Jalen Wilson for value. 3,400 on DraftKings, small forward eligible. Sneaky enough. Sneaky enough. Noah Clowney is probably going to get extended run today. Not a priority, but like last guy into a lineup GPP flyer, sure. I had him finish 6% optimal. He's 1% owned, but that's a deep cut. I don't want to go too crazy talking about like the 8th best guy on every team, because that's what Noah Clowney is. Yes, he is, Jordan. Yes, he is. All right, so summing up Denver and Brooklyn, best plays you're going to find here on DraftKings: Jokic, Murray, Porter, Christian Brown, Aaron Gordon in GPPs. For Brooklyn, Schroeder and Cam Johnson, Cam Thomas in GPPs. On the FanDuel side, Murray, Jokic, Gordon, and then I like Porter and Brown as like GPP pivots. On the FanDuel side, Schroeder and Johnson once again, and Cam Thomas in GPPs. So, game 1 in the books. Let's talk about what we've got going on for today. Schedule is packed. 10 a.m. immediately after this show. Laffy and Ben are going to do the NFL strategy show coming up on another week of the NFL. We've got the NHL strategy show at 2 p.m. I will be back for the deeper dive at 5:30 with DK DFS. He and I are going to break down these 4 games. 6:30. NBA Live before lock. You'll get Greg and Eric after myself and DK. 7:30. Greg and I will hop on to Playback to watch a little basketball. Is Dallas and if Dallas and Minnesota is in a national TV game, we'll be watching that. If it is, then we'll be watching Denver and Brooklyn. And then at 8:30, after Greg and I are on Playback for an hour, which you guys can come join us, watch basketball, talk about whatever's going on, Aton is hopping on to Playback and is going to hang out for a bit. So jam-packed schedule for today in the Stokastic streets. You don't want to miss it. Oh, and I'm on Odd Shopper Live at noon every single day on the Odd Shopper YouTube channel. Watch that as well. Mini game is on TNT. Yeah, I figured. Would have been really hard for a 4-game slate to have Dallas, Minnesota on League Pass. So Unfortunately for us, we'll be watching Denver, Brooklyn. Nobody wants to do that. Dallas Mavericks, 5-point dogs in Minnesota. 222 total. I like the Mavs in this one, but not out of the realm of possibility that we don't have someone here, but we won't know that until 1:30. So ownership for Dallas doesn't really exist. 10% to Kyrie is the highest mark on DraftKings. 22% to Kyrie is the highest mark on FanDuel. No one else on Dallas is in double digits. Now, I think that makes a lot of sense. Dallas is losing 2 possessions in this game. So that's like a fantasy point for everybody, basically, or more. And they're facing a fantastic defense. So this is a bad Dallas spot. And you can see it in the ownership and in my optimal rates. I have Luka 14% optimal on DK, Kyrie 13, PJ Washington 12, no one else in double digits. So like, I think PJ Washington as a GPP play is a little underrepresented at 2% ownership because I have him 12% optimal. But like Kyrie and Luka are both sort of right where they should be. I definitely like Jokic more than Luka. And then on the FanDuel side, it's the same sort of scenario. I think Lively and PJ Washington are a little underowned. But the only thing you could really do with Dallas is GPP pivots other than Kyrie on FanDuel. There's nobody that just immediately stands out as like, I got to have this dude. Now, obviously, if Luka Doncic is the I got to have this dude in your head, he is that guy. But he doesn't grade out that way relative to the rest of the slate. I don't have much else to say here. Spencer Dinwiddie was in the rotation last night ahead of Jaden Hardy. Keep that in mind, I guess. Lively at 5K looks solid on DraftKings. He's 5% owned. He doesn't exactly have a great matchup coming ahead of him. Now, all of the dislike that I just talked about for Dallas is the exact opposite for Minnesota. 20% ownership for Anthony Edwards on DraftKings, 30 for Randall, 20 for Gobert, close to 20 for Mike Conley, 10 for Dante DiVincenzo. On the FanDuel side, it's 30 for Edwards, 25 for Randall, 20 for Gobert, 30 for DiVincenzo, 10 more for McDaniels, Conley, and Reed. Massive ownership coming into Minnesota. And this is a Minnesota team that doesn't do anything to their rotation. Want to know how ridiculous Minnesota's rotation has been so far? For a team that's played 3 games, remember, 3 games, they've only played 9 guys. No one else has stepped on the floor except for their main 8 and 17 minutes worth of Joe Ingles. These guys are playing an 8.5-ish man rotation right now. That's really important for fantasy. Does Dillingham finally get some run tonight? I have no idea why he would. There's absolutely no sign that says Rob Dillingham is going to play a single second today. You want to play Rob Dillingham? You don't play him against Dallas. You play him against some shit team that's showing up soon. Coach Chris, you are making a mistake. So, as I see Minnesota on the DraftKings side, I think Julius Randle is the best option. It's probably the best option on FanDuel too, but you can make a case for Edwards. Randle's 31% owned on DK. I have him 27% optimal as well. He's 7,600 in power forward center. Love him here. And should meet very little resistance with PJ Washington, is my assumption. Not that kind of defense out of Washington. I think Anthony Edwards being 20% owned is spot on. I think Rudy Gobert being 20% owned is spot on. I think Mike Conley being 17% owned is spot on. I think Dante DiVincenzo being 12 is right. Or Naz Reid being 9. Like, all these guys should be in that like 10 to 15 range. The guy I'm most interested in is Jaden McDaniels. Small forward eligible, 4,300 5% owned. Now, I want to be clear. He's a terrible fantasy player. He's like a 0.7 guy at best. I think he should be more like 10 to 15% owned here. If he's going to be 5% owned, I think he's a good GPP play. On the FanDuel side, I have 4 guys on Minnesota north of 20% optimal. Edwards, Randall, Gobert, and DiVincenzo. They're all 20% or higher owned. All 4 of those guys are priorities on FanDuel. Absolute priorities. McDaniels is still equally interesting to me on FanDuel. He's $100 more expensive. Defensive stats count better. And he has the MPE. Only 10% owned. I don't want to speak to Sacramento, Utah, New Orleans, or Golden State, but Minnesota is a priority team today. Because of the way they run their rotations, there's a very realistic chance that they play 8 guys. That's so many minutes, and nobody on this team is priced in a way that, like, you're going to struggle to get there. But, I mean, the only guy that I really don't want is Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and he can absolutely show up in lineups. Like, I'm not getting to Ingles, clearly. But the first 8 guys for Minnesota are all, like, other than Nickeil Alexander-Walker, are all 10% dudes or more. Kevin Eckler, what's up? I don't really have anything else here for Dallas and Minnesota. On the DK side, Luka, Kyrie, PJ Washington in GPPs. For Minnesota, Edwards, Randall, Gobert, McDaniels in GPPs. DiVincenzo, Conley, Reed. On the FanDuel side, Kyrie, Luka, PJ Washington in GPPs. The whole damn team for Minnesota. Kepanekla, I've never done it before. I don't make adjustments to a player pool. I take whatever shows up. I mean, ultimately, you're concentrating yourself towards the top of good plays list. Like, you're not reaching in 4 spots. You're really focused on the best plays. Whoa, Jake, I don't know if you're allowed to say that, man. I mean, just say you're not going to play him. You know, he doesn't have to be on the blacklist. That's a little too much if you're asking me. All right. Game 3 will be up next. We got to talk about something. You guys can see the banner on the top of the screen. Now you can see the ad. We got a promo for you guys. So this past weekend, a Stokastic sub shipped the Millie, Rick12324. You see it on the screen right now. Became a millionaire this past Sunday. So we're running the deal to celebrate him. 30% off any NFL package. I know you guys love NFL. I know this is an NBA show, but I know you guys love the NFL. You can get 30% off. You can get a week. You can get a month. Whichever one you're looking for, you'll get 30% off using the promo code MIL. This is going to last for a week starting today. But you should get in now. Get in because we cover everything. You will get full coverage on Thursday with Sims and projections for Thursday Night Football. Everything for Sunday, all the projections and Sims and whatever. And then you'll get Monday Night Football as well, plus Sunday Night Football. So you're going to crush a lot here if you get it for a week. You're obviously going to get countless slates if you do it for a month. But you'll get it for 30% off on the NFL slide. On the NFL side, shout out to Rick12324. Congratulations on being a millionaire. Link in the description. Come sign up. Come join us. If you play NFL, get this deal. Alrighty. Game 3. Take the ad off. Boop. Got it. Banner's still on the screen, if you're curious. Sacramento Kings, 9 p.m. start. Sacramento Kings, 5.5-point favorites in Utah. 235 total. Sac on a back-to-back. They don't fuck around with their rotation, so we're going to be okay, and they look great. We do have to talk about the Utah Jazz, however, because they are going to be without Taylor Hendricks for the rest of the season because that dude's leg crumbled into pieces last night, untouched. I don't know if you guys saw this. It's gross, but Taylor Hendricks is done for the year because all of a sudden he took a step and his leg was like, nah, we're going to pretend like you don't have bones anymore. And he crumbled. Jeremy, that's not at all how it works. It's not at all how it works. He doesn't lose anything for taxes when he withdraws. It's the full million. Yeah, he is going to have to cut a $300,000 tax check, but DraftKings doesn't do that. The withdrawals have nothing to do with your tax liability. Nothing. Whether you take the money out of DraftKings or leave it in DraftKings, withdrawals have absolutely nothing to do with taxes. Look, Jerry, I'm not even trying to point this out in like a negative way. We get that kind of question a lot. A lot. So for anybody that's curious, you don't pay, you are getting a 1099 in the mail at the end of the year, regardless of your withdrawal status. Only way that he's not getting a 1099 is if he dumps it all back in the next 2 months. You know why Slow-Mo only played 3 minutes versus the Clippers last game? Worried about today? No, I'm not worried about today, but he only played 3 minutes against the Clippers because he sucks. All right, so Sacramento. You're jamming these Sacramento starters. 45% ownership coming into Sabonis right now on DK and close to 40 on FanDuel. Deserves every bit of it. Looks great. Has power forward eligibility on FanDuel. Should beast against Utah. Love the idea of getting to Sabonis today. Will be an interesting push-pull between Sabonis and Jokic. That's for sure. Keegan Murray, 25% owned on DraftKings, 15 on FanDuel. Definitely a better play on DK because he's $700 cheaper. Looks like a great play on both sites. Fox is 20% owned on DraftKings, 35% owned on FanDuel. He was 20 to 25% optimal on both of mine. Looks great. DeRozan is a guy that I think looks like an okay GPP play on DK. 8% owned, but 15% optimal. That is very appealing to me. And he's 25% owned on FanDuel. Deserves every bit of it. Malik Monk, 25% owned on DraftKings. 20 on FanDuel. Deserves every bit of it. Kevin Huerter, a little bit of a GPP play. 7% owned on both sites. I don't mind rolling the dice there. Played a couple extra minutes yesterday as well. But if we're talking about the main six dudes from Sacramento, Sabonis, Murray, Fox, DeRozan, Monk, and Huerter, you're playing a shit ton of them. Sacramento looks a lot like Minnesota today. Different ways, because Sacramento's not necessarily, like Sacramento's getting it from matchup. Minnesota's getting it sort of from matchup, but pricing and rotation is helping Minnesota a lot. Personally, I think you should get to as much of those first six guys from Sacramento as you can. But that Sabonis-Jokic dynamic will be interesting. Maybe you can get them both. I don't know. So Utah is very different. Now, for one, they're a bit of a wild card because Taylor Hendricks is a starter. Like, we're replacing real minutes. And we don't totally know how Utah is going to do that because they're not playing for anything. So this gets kind of tricky. On DK, it's pretty easy. 10% ownership is coming into Markkanen, 10 to Walker Kessler, 10 to Jordan Clarkson, 15 to John Collins. Maybe John Collins needs a couple extra minutes from me. This is the team that I'm going to have to dig into throughout the day. I think Markkanen looks fantastic in GPPs. I think he's under-owned. I have him 17% optimal, 9% owned. I think Keontae George looks like a good GPP play at low ownership. Kessler's fine. Sexton's fine. Clarkson's fine. They're all like just indifferent dudes. I'm not entirely sure who I think is going to start here. My first lean is Cody Williams. But if I'm being honest, I'm not sure. Very easily could be John Collins. They can really do anything. Bryce Sensabaugh is going to get a couple extra minutes. I think Kyle Filipowski is going to be a part of the rotation now. None of this is going to be fun for Utah. They're only GPP plays. There's no one on DraftKings for the Jazz that's a priority. Shout out Jazz, by the way. There's not a single priority on Utah. But Markkanen and Keontae George look like GPP options. And you can work your way through Kessler, Sexton, Clarkson, Cody Williams, John Collins. The starter will matter. I don't have a good feel for it. My guess is either Cody Williams or John Collins, with like a wild outside shot at Bryce Sensabaugh. Now, FanDuel's a little bit different because we have one major chalk play on FanDuel and one really good GPP play on FanDuel. Steven, they might not have a choice is really the answer, but I agree. That's the way that I'm treating it. 43% ownership is coming into Colin Sexton right now on FanDuel. He's $700 cheaper than he is on DK and has the MPE. I think 43% is a little high, but he does look like the best option from Utah on FanDuel. I'm going to mention Keontae George again. 9% owned, 20% optimal for me. I think he's the most under-owned guy from Utah across both sites. As always, you can play Markkanen. He's 15% owned on FanDuel and deserves it. I think Walker Kessler is interesting on FanDuel if you want to pivot away from some of that heavy ownership. I'm not sure Sabonis should be 37-4 in ownership on FanDuel. I think it should be a little tighter than that. And then we're seeing 22% ownership coming into John Collins on FanDuel. I think what we're seeing here is the assumption that John Collins is going to get a pretty big step up in minutes. And honestly, I don't have any problem with that thought process. But we don't really have the prop market to check that yet. So my assumption was that he is going to maintain as the backup center to Kessler and they'll figure it out elsewhere. I don't know if that's the case, though. They can move Markkanen to strictly the 4, and then they don't really need that much else at the 4, and they can fill in at the 1, 2, and 3. All righty. Anything else for Sacramento and Utah? Jack Adams sent in a super chat. Said, definitely renewing the NBA tools after the promo. Awesome, Jack. Thank you. Lineups have been consistently cashing. Who are your favorite options to get different for small field and single entry contests? So I've hit on a couple of those throughout the show. Aaron Gordon, assuming we're talking DraftKings, if it's FanDuel, let me know. I'm just going to keep going for DraftKings. Aaron Gordon would be one who's like relatively low owned that I think is interesting. Cam Thomas, I think would be interesting in small fields. Luka to a degree. PJ Washington for sure. Jaden McDaniels. These are all the guys that I have like much higher optimal rates on than their ownership. DeMar DeRozan, Markkanen, Keontae George. That's everybody from the first 3 games. Let's hit game number 4. We can't really talk a ton about this one just yet, but we'll be able to hit on some of it. And then we're going to have enough time to build out a couple lineups. So first one up, Pelicans and Warriors. Pels are 3.5-point favorites in Golden State, 225 total. I'm going to say this now and no one's going to believe what I'm going to say. I like Golden State in this game. I don't think they should be this big of underdogs. I might end up being very wrong with no Steph. I think Golden State still looks good here. Now on the Pelican side, no Trey Murphy, no DeJounte Murray. We know that. Not a ton of ownership coming in here, but it's scattered. 19% to CJ McCollum, 15% to Zion Williamson, single digits to everybody else on DK. I think Brandon Ingram, Herb Jones, and Jordan Hawkins are all really good GPP plays. So, Jack, they fit that same question. I completely agree with the ownership on McCollum and Zion, however. Those guys should be in that 15 to 20 range. But Ingram, Zion, and Jordan Hawkins are a little underrepresented. Well, Coach Chris, I think they're going to make it a little bit easier on Kerr, considering there's no Steph Curry and there's no DeAnthony Melton here. I think running a 12-man rotation is going to be a little bit more difficult now that they're missing 50 minutes. Now, the FanDuel side of the Pelicans is a little bit different. We've got 25% ownership coming into CJ. We have 30 coming into Herb Jones, where he's only 4,900. And then around 15 for BI and for Zion, and just shy of 10 for Jordan Hawkins. Yeah, Brandon, that's another one too. This game is, the Warrior side of this one is a pain in the ass. For the most part, I agree with all the FanDuel ownership on the Pels. CJ, 100% agree. Herb's probably like a hair too high, but looks really good given the price. Brandon Ingram completely deserves 20% ownership. Zion and Hawkins should be both around 10. I don't really want anybody else. I don't have a ton of interest in Yves Missi, center only, or Tice, center only. Javonte Green is like a fine enough value that you won't get too much, a couple percentage points. That's all. But Golden State sucks today. So Steph Curry out, DeAnthony Melton out, Andrew Wiggins questionable. The starting lineup here is going to be huge. It's pretty clear to me that our ownership assumptions think Moses Moody is going to play way more than I do. I am going to be changing Golden State. So I don't want to be firm on anything that I say for the Warriors because we need a lot more information. I have Wiggins in. He's very clearly not in the ownership because he's 1% on DraftKings. Impossible if he's playing. Kuminga's 40% owned. That makes sense. Buddy Hield's 35. That makes sense. Pajemski's 38. That makes sense. Draymond Green, Trace Jackson Davis really shouldn't matter all that much based on those injuries. Those guys should just do the same stuff. But we have Moody at 50%. I don't see it. But at the same time, if he's playing more than 16 minutes, he's going to look incrementally better. I don't have a great feel for who starts. Especially, the Wiggins piece matters a lot. Kuminga, I think Kuminga, Wiggins, Draymond, Trace Jackson Davis makes some sense. I could see them starting Kyle Anderson in that spot. I could see them... I could see Pajemski getting that spot, but I don't have a great feel at all about who is starting for the Warriors today, and you should not either. It's a tough thing. So we're going to need a lot more information from the betting markets. But the takeaway here is this. Regardless of what shows up, I expect the Golden State Warriors to be the most owned team on today's slate. When you take Steph out and Melton out, that's massive. If you happen to take Andrew Wiggins out too, you just have to play a shit ton of the Warriors. I don't want to dig into specifics yet. It's too early for that this morning. All I'm telling you is that there's going to be 5 or 6 30% owned plays on the Warriors, it seems, across both sites. But you got to pay very, very close attention to that starting lineup. Right now, I'm not as big of a believer in Moses Moody. Your mileage may vary. If he starts, it's a completely different story. I'm not sure he starts. I don't know why he would. I don't know. Maybe he should be playing 20 minutes. I don't know. But, we're not talking about a guy that... He's not a point guard. If they want someone to run the offense, it's Draymond and Kyle Anderson. So... we have no idea what this is going to look at. I mean, Looney is in play, kind of. I don't know why you would want to do it. He looks a little bit better on DK at 3,700. I would not be playing him on FanDuel. I think you'll find much better plays than Looney. But this is one we're going to need more information. Deeper dive. 5:30. We'll have way more information about this Golden State Warriors team after 1:30. And after we start to get a little bit more in the markets. I mean, Draymond's just Draymond. I don't think the status of anybody matters here. It's really just how much do you think Draymond plays? I don't know. I don't get the sense that he's just going to play 32 now that Steph's gone. So, very tricky situation for the Warriors. This is the spot you want to pay closest attention to all day. Now, I have been waiting for this for a week. It is time to load the single lineup sim. I want to build a lineup for DraftKings and I want to build a lineup for FanDuel. You just play with this visual a little bit. All right, there we go. So let's build a DK lineup. Now, to me, doing this in basketball is the easiest way to do it. The first thing that I'm going to do, and we got to remember, I'm going to build this based on the data that is in here right now. So Moses Moody is a much different play in this than what I'm expecting him to be. But this is more about understanding what this tool is and what this tool does. So I am going to put Moses Moody in. And I'm going to put Pajemski in and Kuminga in. I'm going to get Christian Brown, Randall, Cam Johnson, Sabonis, and then I have 9,100 left for anybody. Let's get Anthony Edwards. This is going to be our first test. All right, 59.7. We're going to be able to improve that. All righty. So there we go. There's our bookmark. So right away, we could try and figure out the best way to fix this. I don't think it's swapping off of Edwards in that spot because he's not all that owned. And I don't care about like having the Warriors in at guard spots. Doesn't matter. So who do I want to remove from this lineup to try to look a little bit better? I think it's Sabonis, honestly, just because of the ownership. Can I get something close? Let's move Randall to center. And then at power forward, we can get to Zion. Leaves us 1,200. Can I upgrade Cam Johnson to any other forward? I could upgrade Cam Johnson to Keegan Murray, grab an extra point and discount ownership. Leave 600 on the table, and we gave up quite a bit of projection, but we've also given up quite a bit of ownership. So let's see what the impact is. I'm thinking this one's going to be a little lower. Yeah, 31. We gave up too many fantasy points, which is not surprising. I'm going to clear that, and now I'm going to build what I think could be the best possible lineup we can find. And I want to start by looking at it salary down. Jokic and Sabonis are pretty clearly the top two options you can get to at center, but Jokic is pulling half the ownership because of the price. So I'm going to go to Jokic first. And then if we need one additional pay up, it's to me either going to be Anthony Edwards or De'Aaron Fox, and I think it should be Edwards. So I'm going to put Edwards in. Now I'm going to start looking for value. So number one value point guard is probably Pajemski. But we can get Mike Conley at a giant ownership discount, but basically the same value. So I'm going to take Conley here. Small forward, I think, makes a lot of sense to stick with Christian Braun because of the price. And I think power forward makes a lot of sense for Kuminga. Now, any guard, we can get weird here. I'm going to skip Moody if I can. And I'm going to go to Dennis Schroeder. Now I need pretty good savings. So let's test Kyle Anderson. And now we have 5,300 for anybody at utility. Highest projected guy in this spot would be Cam Johnson. So let's test Cam Johnson. So giant ownership discount. We're down 80 ownership points since the first lineup. We're also down 8 fantasy points, which might be too many. We might have gotten too far away from the optimal, and we could actually take on more ownership for better fantasy points. 69.7. So we did then build the best possible lineup we could. And I think it's pretty easily upgradable. If I take Conley out, is there a better point guard option than Mike Conley? Not even remotely close. Is there a better option than Schroeder at guard? I don't think so, right? No. And there's no way I could upgrade Kyle Anderson. Well, I could put Cam Johnson in. At forward. Then I have 3,900 for any utility. So technically now, by upgrading Anderson to Moody, we gain 5 fantasy points and 45% of ownership. What does it do to the sim? Yeah, 51. Okay. All right. I am going to hit Mitch Farrell and Andrew Martinez's lineups quickly, and then I'll build one on FanDuel, and then we got to go. So we're looking at Schroeder, Christian Braun, Kevin Huerter, MPJ, Rudy Gobert, Edwards, Randall, Gordon. Edwards, Randall, Gordon. 261 and 173. So that's a really massive ownership discount. I think you're probably giving up a little. Yeah, you're giving up too many fantasy points at 261. The ownership looks good, but you need to find some more efficient plays in that spot. You've given up too much off the optimal. All right, Andrew Martinez. Schroeder. Pajemski. Cam Johnson. Julius Randle. Nikola Jokic. Moses Moody. Draymond Green. John Collins. 276.99. 245.74. This should be pretty good. I'm guessing this is either the best we've done, but certainly positive. This might be the best one. Yeah. Andrew Martinez. Good work, brother. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. All right, one for FanDuel before we get out of here. Let's find the value first. So, Moody in. Trace Jackson Davis in. John Collins in. Sexton in. Gonna move Collins. I'm gonna make that Randall instead, just for raw points. Let's see. We need some small forwards. That's gonna be Cam Johnson, Kyle Anderson. That's enough Golden State now for me. Point guard can be Schroeder. Shooting guard can be DiVincenzo. Center can be John Collins. Okay. So we've grabbed all the best values we could find. We have $11,000 left. So we can very quickly upgrade this lineup in different places. So if we think about it at point guard, we've got Schroeder and Sexton, both decent values, but it does feel like we can upgrade here. And I think by getting off of Dennis Schroeder and turning him into De'Aaron Fox, maybe not. Yeah, maybe not Fox. I'm going to go with CJ. Then it's Moody and DiVincenzo. I can probably pretty easily upgrade DiVincenzo. So he's at a 4.9 value. If we don't want to give too much of that up, because he's already 28% owned, I'll get his teammate. We'll slot in Anthony Edwards. Cam Johnson, Kyle Anderson. So right away, the first thing that I'm seeing is that our best bet is probably upgrading center, because we have enough to get a good one. In particular, I think that it's safest to just grab Sabonis. Now we only have 1,200 left. I can probably get a much better option than Kyle Anderson, but the ownership is interesting. So what I actually want to do is see what's the best $6,200 power forward that isn't Trace Jackson Davis. So I'm going to swap Trace Jackson Davis for Draymond. Let's see how we end up here. 300 left on the table, 302.60 projection, 257 ownership. 71. Cheers. Right out of the gate, built a gem. And that, my friends, will be the end of this show. Thank you guys for being here. Another one in the books. Reminder, 30% off any NFL package. This deal lasts for a week. The promo code is MIL. The link is in the description of this video. Sign up week or month for the NFL. We're trying to celebrate Rick 12324 won the Millie with the Stokastic avatar this past weekend in the NBA. Tomorrow, we're back for a massive slate once again. I think we have 10. We might have 11. It could be 12. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's at least 10. So we'll have a lot to talk about tomorrow. But for now, I'm going to get on out of here. Bye, everybody.